Michigan State football with two huge transfer portal re-additions to this roster. Also, who are some other targets? We'll talk a little bit of hoops and then mailbag questions, including Aidan Chiles, who can change positions, and so much more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you guys so much for kicking off your day with us here at Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Or I guess I shouldn't, always say kicking off your day. If you're watching the live show on YouTube right now, hey, well, thanks for ending your day with us here at Locked On Spartans. Hopefully you'll stay up for the entire 30-ish minutes and this voice doesn't put you to bed here in the next few moments or so. Before getting any further, please rate, review, subscribe here to this YouTube show or the podcast wherever you are digesting this. Hey, thank you so much. And feel free to smash that subscribe button. Ever want to reach out? LockedOnSpartans@gmail.com is the best place to find us. And enough of the housekeeping. Away we go because, if you told me to start the year that eventually at some point in this calendar year of the year of our Lord 2023 that, we'd be winning a battle between Ohio State, Oregon, Auburn for a football player's playing rights. I would have, took your word for it. I would have said, well, sure, Mel Tucker's our coach. He's known for being a really good recruiter. It's about time he was going to win one of these battles. Well, here we are. How about none of that? How about Jonathan Smith? Yes, the man who has had his recruiting expertise questioned at some times. How about this? Beating out, like we just said, Ohio State, Oregon, and Auburn for one, Derrick Harmon. Yes, you already know the player. This guy has been here for a few seasons, and yes, he did enter his name in the transfer portal, and this defensive tackle was very, very highly coveted, taking official visits to those three locations I just named. And, oh boy, let me tell you, a full court press put on by Oregon down the stretch here after Oregon struck out on Texas A&M transfer Walter Nolan. Things were looking good for the Ducks until Jonathan Smith picked up that phone and made his last-ditch recruiting effort for Derrick Harmon. And yes, guys, he's coming back. And that is a massive, massive re-addition to this team for two reasons. One, Derrick Harmon, mighty talented player. All it takes is a few eyeballs inside your noggin and just, television that works or tickets inside a Spartan Stadium to realize that this kid can wreak havoc in the trenches. But also, was depth getting a little thin there on the defensive line. And it still kind of is. It still kind of is because right now in the interior, yes, you have Harmon. You also have Maverick Hansen. You have Jarrett Jackson and Alex Van Sumeren as well, along with Simeon Barrow. So those are five guys, five names we know. But, man, if it wasn't Derrick Harmon returning, you have Maverick Hansen. This is a guy that has been here for quite some time. If he opts into returning in 2024, that is. Also, Jarrett Jackson, another guy, he could opt in, he could not. And Alex Van Sumeren, who came here as a very promising player, but already two big injuries to start his career. You would like to have Derrick Harmon more than you would not like to have him. So, one big addition, or I guess re-addition to this defense on this beautiful Wednesday in East Lansing. So, there could also be some other re-additions as well. Zion Yun, he's in the transfer portal as well, a 6'6" defensive end. He's going to make his decision somewhere in the near future. And also, Jacoby Windman as well, former linebacker, edge rusher for Michigan State, who I think when you blend those two positions together, linebacker, he did play a little defensive end here at Michigan State. Like that's a player that'd be perfect for the Joe Rossi defense. So he's got another year of eligibility. Will he spend it here in East Lansing? People are optimistic that could happen for Mr. Windman. But hey, for now, we do know that we have Derrick Harmon back in our clutches. So God, that's just nice. But that's not all. that is not all, because we actually started our day Wednesday with the other side of the trenches giving us good news in the name of Geno VanDeMark returning to Michigan State as well. Now, this is a guy that had 6 starts last year, mostly played right guard, a little bit of center, and hey, solid player, one of the early 4-stars to commit to Mel Tucker to start his career. And this is a kid that, well, we've known his name for quite some time because of the promise that he has shown. And start of the year was for him, still kind of learning the ropes of college football. But this tweet from Big Alfredo Sauce on Twitter, his real name is Al Karsten. Go give him a follow, though. Big Alfredo Sauce is his Twitter name. Tweeted this out as well, taking a PFF grade, a Pro Football Focus grade. Struggled early in 2023, but at 81.6 pass block grade weeks 8 through 13, ranked 2nd amongst all Big Ten offensive guards. Guys, 81.6 to be precise. That's really good. He also gave up 0 sacks last season. I believe just 7 pressures on the year. And that's starting half the year at that right guard position. So, man, if you've watched this show before, anytime in the last few weeks, because I feel like I've been fearing what the offensive line was going to look like almost every day for the last few weeks, because at some point in this offseason, there were 9 offensive linemen that you would have to replace. The 7 guys in the portal, and then the 2 additional ones in J.D. Duplain and Nick Samak. All right? But hey, now Baldwin and Boyd, they're back. Those are probably your starting tackles. You have Dallas Fincher, who I don't think ever entered the transfer portal, and then Christian Phillips, and then Geno VanDeMark. Right now, those are inside guys as well. Also, you still are targeting a few more transfers as well. Luke Newman, the FCS All-American from Holy Cross, who is from Michigan. Could be mutual interest there as well for that tackle position. So some depth right there for the Spartans potentially. Also for the inside, Josh Preby out of Northwestern, and then Spencer Holstage as well from UCLA. Those are inside guys that could offer, if not depth, then maybe even a starting role for both those guys on the inside as well. So a few weeks ago, like I know some of you guys were cool, calm, collected. You guys never had a doubt, but I get a little worried sometimes, guys. And when 9 offensive linemen have to be replaced from last year's team, and I get that it wasn't a world-beating road grader offensive line last year, but still, you need bodies, you need names, you need experience. That's what Michigan State is now getting back. But with Geno VanDeMark specifically, that is a plus lineman. Now, I know that, hey, sometimes when a guy comes back to Michigan State, and this is reserved for the rival fans, rival fans are ridiculous. I do the same to Michigan, quite frankly. But you hear the cries of, oh, they're only coming back because no one else wanted them. That's right, Sparty. They thought that they were better than they were, and no one called their phone, and that's why they're heading back to East Lansing. You know by now with Derrick Harmon, that's simply not the case, right? Auburn, Ohio State, and Oregon were after this guy. But also Geno VanDeMark, Oklahoma thought they had him. Oklahoma was already clearing out the apartment for Geno VanDeMark. They were very confident that they were going to land their 2nd Michigan State transfer, Spencer Brown being the first one, but not so fast, my friend. These were 2 very, very highly coveted guys. And I was asking myself, after both these guys announced their return, which one is a bigger deal to return to Michigan State? And my God, I might be the worst podcast host of all time because I know that I'm supposed to have a real strong opinion, on this debate question that I just asked myself. But God, doesn't it seem like a dead heat? Because everything we said with Derrick Harmon, right? The guy's talented. Okay, he's a plus player at his position, but also the depth too. But God, I guess if you're going to pin me against the wall and make me pick who the bigger deal is, give me Derrick Harmon. God, but I could be so easily convinced for Geno VanDeMark the other way. I could wake up tomorrow morning and say Geno VanDeMark. Look, at the end of the day, both these guys are definitely worth celebrating, bringing back to the program. So that is 2 more big additions, or I guess re-additions is what we will call that, for Jonathan Smith. And these are some big portal gets right here. We just heard Jaron Glover, okay? He came back to Michigan State after taking a visit down at Georgia. Boyd, Baldwin, both of those young men on the offensive line as well. Those are plus players, guys that could start at tackle for Michigan State next year. And also, well, Jack Vallian, the tight end that led the nation in tight end touchdown catches last year. And then Who else is in my notes? Oh, yeah, that guy by the name of Aidan Chiles. That's right. You guys may have heard about him as well. So, yes, look, we've been fairly high on what Jonathan Smith has done for high school recruiting, taking Michigan State from the 80th ranked class or the 90th ranked class, depending where you're looking, to somewhere either in the 50s or as high as 38, according to 24/7 Sports. But also take a look at what he's doing in the transfer portal, not just for guys that he's luring in from other programs, but of course, guys that were at Michigan State, had the option to look elsewhere, but then are returning home to East Lansing. That is some mighty fine work by Jonathan Smith. We're going to be back talking a little more about the transfer portal here in a hot segment. First, just need to talk your ears off about Gametime, the best ticketing app out there. Gang, I love Gametime for I don't even know how many reasons. It is truly countless reasons, but I think my favorite one is that when you're walking to the stadium, the concert hall, the theater that you are going to, buy your tickets then, because their last-minute deals on Gametime are second to none. Or also, hey, if you're getting a little nervous, if you don't like buying them steps away from the foot of the stadium, you want to buy them a few days beforehand, as they always have the flash deals just for you. It's so easy to buy the tickets. You actually get a real picture of where your seats are. It's not some rendering with AI or something. No. It is the actual view of what you will get. And 2 taps to buy them. They are zapped to your phone immediately. You're not going to rummage through your email with no service outside the stadium wondering, oh my God, where are my tickets? No, guys, they're just sent straight to your phone. It is so painless with Gametime. If you don't believe me, just try it for yourself, but also save yourself some money, because when you download the Gametime app, use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off at Gametime, the best ticketing app out there with lowest prices guaranteed. Also, gang, you know it. The day ends in Y, so I'm rocking Home Field Apparel. When you go to homefieldapparel.com, you are going to be treated to some of the best vintage logos out there from your Michigan State Spartans. Or, hey, let's say for some crazy reason you're not a Michigan State fan. Well, they got dozens, well over 100 schools to choose from at homefieldapparel.com. Now, don't tell anyone I said this, but I actually just ordered some pretty sweet Arizona State and Miami shirts from homefieldapparel.com. Again, don't tell anyone I ever said that, but yeah, that's how much I love Home Field Apparel. Not just for their logos too, guys, but this is the most comfortable clothing you'll have in your closet, whether it's t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, crew neck sweatshirts, hoodies, or even their hats. You're going to look good, but you're also going to feel amazing. Now, save yourself some money, too, when you go to homefieldapparel.com with LOS23 as your promo code. Again, promo code LOS23 for 15% off your first purchase at homefieldapparel.com. All right, let's get back into the mix here. There are 2 players that have entered the transfer portal that really have arched an eyebrow, if not 2, on this Wednesday. The first being Peny Boone. Now, that's a name that sounds awfully familiar because, well, yes, he's just down at Toledo, an hour south of where Michigan State is. Okay, that might be it for all you Maction heads out there, or for all you Big Ten heads out there. Yeah, we played this guy a few times when he was at Maryland, or if you're a recruiting head, well, yeah, that's a former 4-star running back from Detroit. So, yes, Peny Boone has entered the transfer portal after winning MAC Offensive Player of the Year for the Rockets with more than 1,600 all-purpose yards last year for Toledo. Now, 1,400 of those did come on the ground, rushing with 15 touchdowns. Now, he did say to Alan True of 24/7 Sports that, quote, it would be nice if Michigan or Michigan State offered. Usually, if not, you never get an answer that candid from a transfer portal player when it comes to, hey, who do you want to hear from? I mean, you might not even have that question asked. Like, that's how little it actually gets answered. But he was candid. He was transparent. He wants to hear from either that school down the road or our Michigan State Spartans, which, yeah, God, why not? MAC Player of the Year. This guy's from Detroit, former 4-star. He has the pedigree. It's clear he knows how to find the end zone. Well, right now, our running back room is a little full right now, isn't it? Yes, you do have Nate Carter. You do have Jalen Berger and Jaron Mangum right now as your 3-headed monster right there. And yes, I know it was by numbers underwhelming for all 3 of those guys. I have a hard time putting the offensive struggles and the lack of rushing yards entirely on the running backs. Some of that was the offensive line. Maybe a lot of it was the play calling as well. But still, like, I think Nate Carter is a plus running back. I think Jalen Berger, solid running back as well. Jaron Mangum, he's your short yardage specialist, ideally. I know we didn't see it a lot last year just because he was hurt for, 10 games it felt like. But yes. And also, okay, well, those are the three guys I named. You have Davion Prim, Brandon Toulis, Jalen Barberin, and Mekhi Frazier as well. That's 7 scholarship running backs already. If you bring Peny Boone in, that bumps it to 8. However, like, this isn't CYO, right? This isn't your local youth league where everyone gets a fair amount of playing time and, hey, let's all hold hands at the end of the day and sing Kumbaya and everyone gets a fair share. No, this is nasty college sports. If there's a player that talented like Peny Boone, well, bring him in. And by the time the spring transfer portal window opens, well, sorry, kid. I know that you were expecting to be the second string running back this year, but you see that MAC Offensive Player of the Year over there that's been doing really well in spring camp? He jumped you in the depth chart. And good luck in the transfer portal. We'll miss you. Don't sell all of your Michigan State gear. Surely you want to have some of them for the memories. I mean, yeah, I know it's crazy to have 8 scholarship running backs, but if you bring in Peny Boone and he's better than one of the guys, if not all the guys I just named, them's the breaks. If someone that talented is in the portal and also saying that he wants to hear from you, pick up that phone and have him in for the spring. Things are going to sort themselves out here if he is truly that good, which, by the way, I think he is. All right, and number 2, this is a guy that entered the portal a little bit ago before Peny Boone did. This is Jabre Barber, 5'10" receiver out of Troy. Now, this guy had 75 catches for 999 yards and 5 touchdowns for Troy. And just for reference of how many yards 999 yards is and how many catches 75 catches is, well, Montorie Foster and Malik Carr were your top 1 and 2 pass catchers and receivers for receiving yard getters for Michigan State this year. Both of those totals by Mr. Barber are more than Foster and Carr combined. Now, that's not to knock Foster or Carr. I mean, that really just speaks to how brutal things were on the offense last year, but also, more specifically, why I brought this up to really highlight how many yards and catches Barber put up this year. Now, Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports, he tweeted out that he is going to visit Mississippi State, Kansas State, and, well, Michigan State. This is why we bring him up. Right now, the receiver room, it stands pretty solid. It stands pretty okay. We already talked about getting Jerron Glover back after taking an official visit to Georgia. Now, this is a kid that was hurt most of last year. We didn't really get to see a lot of Jerron Glover, but this is a guy, based on what you hear from the whispers inside the football program during the fall camp or even the spring camp, that Glover can be a guy with a lot of upside. You also get Foster back, the leading receiver from last year. You have Gates Jr., you have Nick Marsh, TJ Sheffield, and also, too, if you want to go to the tight end room, Jack Velling, Brendan Parachek. Let's see if you get anything out of him this year. But I don't think it's a receiver room that's like, all right, we're done. Like, this is it. We love our guys. It cannot get better than this. Like, no, you can build on that receiver room. And by a guy with, almost 1,000 yards catching last year, 75 catches, I mean, that's a lightning rod of a player you can add to this room. Now, what this does mean, again, I will point this out, 5'10" receiver out of Troy. Jerron Glover, not necessarily a hulking presence. I believe he's 6'1". Montorie Foster, the same. Gates Jr. Now, Nick Marsh, he does have a bigger build to him, the 6'3", 6'4" frame. But this is, as far as experience goes, not a room with any guys that are, big-bodied pass catchers. But you might not necessarily need that. Like, I did go back to 2015 because I do remember that receiver room and not thinking of anyone that was, a hulking presence like a Keon Coleman, for example. The 2015 team did quite okay on offense, and they didn't have any receivers that were over 6'1". So, look, if you add this guy to the room, that's a speedy enough guy where you could just make it work on offense. Also, speaking of Keon Coleman, he did declare that he is going to take off to the NFL draft. Shocker there. Please. And he's also one of 76 kids that are declining playing in Florida State's bowl game, which is kind of a bummer. But hey, beside that old man gripe that I have, he did in his letter on social media, of course, shouted out, Seminole Nation. That's who he ended his career with, but did take a paragraph out to say, quote, "To my Michigan State family, you're forever in my heart for helping me build the foundation that I stood on throughout my college career. While I finished up as Seminole, I'm forever a Spartan dog. We are family." So best of luck to him. I think one of the lowest moments of the year for me is that opening night game that Florida State had against LSU, and Keon Coleman had 3 touchdowns. And I think that was the only game in the nation that night too. So all eyes were on Florida State. All eyes were on Keon Coleman. And the moment that was such a low moment was because, well, dang it, we realized that he made the right decision by leaving here for this year. And that's a bummer. And I think he knew that too, that, hey, you know what? He kind of had to go. It was not going to work out here in East Lansing as far as exposure goes, as far as rising up the draft boards goes. And that is what he ultimately did this year at Florida State. So, look, no hard feelings for me, I guess, after a full year has gone by. And, so, hey, best of luck to him. We're going to be talking a little bit about basketball here and then some mailbag questions here in a hot second. Just need to talk your ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook, the best sports book in the game. Folks, as the weather gets colder and the season gets older, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's right. That is $150 if your team wins. Just look at this weekend's menu of NFL games and don't even worry about laying the points. Don't worry about the spread. Don't worry about anything else other than picking a team that is going to win. And with that first bet on FanDuel, if it hits, hey, just like I said, $150. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is clearly no better time to get in on the action. And the app is super easy to use with a wide range of betting options, including player props, spreads, over-unders, first-time touchdown score, or, hey, mix it up with their same-game parlays, the same-game parlay plus. It doesn't get better than what they have to offer at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and kick off the NFL season with us. It's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Now, if you will indulge me here for a little bit, guys, if you've been listening to the show for a little bit of time, you know that I have a crippling addiction to bracketology. That's right. I will be looking up bracketology well before the Thanksgiving turkey even hits the table. And I kind of had a little panic moment. This was before the Baylor game about bracketology, because if you remember, before that game against Baylor, Joe Lunardi of ESPN, he didn't have Michigan State as his last 4 teams in, or the next 4 teams out, or even the next 4 teams out after that. Michigan State wasn't even on the bracketology radar before they beat down the Baylor Bears. However, things have changed, and let's just do a quick bracketology update. Joe Lunardi, he came out with another edition on Tuesday, and right now he has your Michigan State Spartans as one of the last 4 buys as an 11 seed against Villanova. Okay, let's say they win that game. All right, the 3 seed that they would play would be Clemson. Let's say they win that game. All right, that would be against 2-seeded FAU, and if they win that game, well, the 1 seed in that region is the Purdue Boilermakers. Now, that last part isn't fun, but I will leave us on a good note here. Joe Lunardi has us in the Detroit region. Oh, man. Spartans versus Boilers. Elite 8. Winner goes to the Final Four at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. I will die of a heart attack by halftime of that game. There's no way I make it out alive. But yes, just wanted to update everyone there. And also, too, let's keep it with basketball here for a hot second. I would like to congratulate the Detroit Pistons for completing history. That's right. You did it, you losers. 27 straight losses. And I'm going to tie this to Michigan State because I don't know what's more jaw-dropping here. The fact that Michigan State football has had 2 wins since the Detroit Pistons' last victory, or the fact that since November 1st, Michigan State basketball has more wins at Little Caesars Arena, the home of your Detroit Pistons. Well, yeah, the Spartans have more wins at Little Caesars Arena than the Detroit Pistons do since November 1st. I don't know what's crazier to say out loud, the football one or the basketball one, but I'll let you guys figure that out. All right, a few mailbag questions here. Again, lockedonspartans@gmail.com or Sheehan_sports on Twitter if you ever want to shout out some questions. You guys had a ton of questions. We will be getting to them throughout, if not the rest of this week, then next week as well. This ain't it. He writes in, has Chiles signed yet? If not, do we know why? Now, this is a question I see popping up time to time again, and I also actually reached out to Ryan O'Bleness of Spartans Illustrated to just fact check this. But transfer players don't actually technically sign anything. So that's why Aidan Chiles hasn't signed yet. It just doesn't happen. Sometimes teams use in graphics that a transfer portal guy has signed, but that's just more for the social media flair, if you will. Now, what does happen is you got to enroll in class, and then you have to, be a student at the school that you're going to. For Michigan State, classes start January 8th for this spring semester. Aidan Chiles is expected to be on campus January 4th, enrolled on January 4th, and then starting classes on January 8th. So, yes, we did talk yesterday for a little bit about USC trying to poach Aidan Chiles, but we also try to douse the flames of any concern around that, and those are the dates to look for. January 4th, January 8th for Aidan Chiles. But hey, good question. That's a question a lot of people want to know. Now, speaking of Aidan Chiles Enthusiast, that's right, that's his name on Twitter, writes in, what's the first touchdown connection of the season? Is it Chiles to Montori Foster, Chiles to Glover? And is this offensive line becoming sneakily good with the guys withdrawing from the portal in the recruits we've gotten? We'll tackle that first question first. I'm just going to go straight Corvallis to East Lansing connection. I'm going to go Aidan Chiles to Jack Velling. Michigan State, a nice little 8-play drive. They get the ball at the 7-yard line, and then a little play action from Nate Carter or Peny Boone, and then they find a wide open Jack Velling in the end zone. Now for the second one, is this offensive line becoming sneakily good with the guys withdrawing? I'm certainly feeling better about the offensive line right now than I was 2 weeks ago when, again, they had to replace 9 guys. And you do see the building blocks there. Look, I think Baldwin and Boyd are solid tackles. I think VanDeMark is a plus player on the inside as well. And if you get any of these other transfer targets that you're looking at, you could have a solid offensive line. But I'm really gun shy to just go all in right now because last offseason, guys, I'm sorry, I was really high on the offensive line as well. Because, hey, what were we sold on? We were sold on good experience with Duplain and Samak. We were sold on young, promising talent, and then great coaching as well. And that's kind of what we have here right now. We have some good leadership coming back, some good veterans. We do have some good coaching with Coach Maholchek. But I would not call last year's offensive line great during the season. So, yes, while the building blocks are there, and while people do have plenty of reason to be optimistic going into this season with the offensive line, I just got to see it first. I don't want to be burnt on this 2 years in a row. But yes, there is reason to be optimistic. So if you are one of the glass half full people out there, you're already living a better life than I am. So go ahead and enjoy that optimism. Scott writes in, what football players, current or incoming, would have potential for a significant position change? First thought was turning our new offensive line commit from Idaho into a D lineman based on his film. Now, who Scott is talking about is Rakeem Johnson, 6'3", 255-pound interior offensive line from Idaho. Also just won Max Prep's Idaho Player of the Year. So it's not just some player from Idaho we're getting. No, we're getting the player from the Potato State over there. So, but no, that is really a good point because just alone on the frame, 6'3", 255 pounds, and also with the film, I'm sure he looks solid, playing Idaho high school football. I don't know if I take a huge grain of salt in that, but I do take a huge grain of salt in what we just talked about in the first segment with not a lot of depth in the interior defensive line. Now, I'm sure that will get shored up a little bit with the transfer portal, whether it's this window or the spring window. But if times get dire, and we've seen some injuries on the defensive line, I wouldn't mind giving Rakeem Johnson a spin on that side of the ball as well. Now, I will add a player myself as well. Mekhi Frazier. Okay, he's the running back recruit from Texas, the Lone Star State, and also has played some edge, some outside linebacker for his high school team. He's actually won plenty of accolades for playing outside linebacker at his high school as well. And he's a tough guy. We talked about this when Mekhi Frazier committed to Michigan State. I see a lot of Brandon Wright in his tape in the sense that, okay, he's a running back, but also this guy is just a physical, tough-nosed football player. And, just like Brandon Wright got transitioned to defense, I do wonder if Mekhi Frazier gets transitioned to defense as well. Now, I don't know if he could be a straight-up edge or defensive end because he is 5'11". All right, that is a little undersized for that position, but the Joe Rossi defense, use an outside linebacker, many times bumps him up to that line as a stand-up edge rusher on passing down situations. I can see that for Mekhi Frazier as well, just switching him to a linebacker. Yes, 5'11". I think he's 210 pounds right now. But we just had a linebacker that was just 6 feet tall, 225 pounds, by the name of Antoine Simmons, who turned out pretty well here in East Lansing as well. So, no, I'm not going to say he's going to be Antoine Simmons, this all Big Ten guy. That's quite a stretch. But I think, especially with the running back room that clogged up right now, I do wonder if early on in his career he does make a switch to linebacker. So that's what I got for you right there. We are going to end this with the question from Maximilian. If you're going to bring back one player back to the program from the NBA, who would you choose? For me, it would be Jaren Jackson Jr. is what Maximilian said. And I would love to add my own opinion, cut against the grain there, but no, that's just the answer key. It's Jaren Jackson Jr. You throw him at the 5. Oh my God, he's averaging 21-6 in the NBA right now. He just won the Defensive Player of the Year. Like it has to be Jaren Jackson. I mean, Miles Bridges is a fun player, but he ain't doing 21-6 the way Jaren Jackson's doing it. That is with a nice sledgehammer on the defensive end as well. So it's got to be Jaren Jackson. Or I guess maybe Draymond Green too for his leadership as well. And I hear he has a lot of time on his hands, but no, We'll go Triple J. That's right. We're going to run this back, and we're going to make a March Madness run right with Jaren Jackson. All right, guys. Hey, you know what? This is fun. Let's do it again tomorrow. You know where to keep it tuned. Locked on Spartans. If there's any news that breaks, any mailbag questions you guys got, hey, we're going to hit it tomorrow, next week, 5 days a week, right here, Locked on Spartans. Love you all. Go Green.